In the grand, opulently decorated marble hall of the historic city courthouse, the resolute black judge sat with dignified poise, her eyes burning with quiet determination and unyielding resolve despite the overwhelming audacity surrounding her. Across the polished wooden benches, an arrogant billionaire renowned for his extravagant wealth and unchecked power smirked arrogantly, his disdain for the judge vividly apparent in every dismissive, careless gesture he made. The billionaire, whose staggering fortune had been amassed through ruthless, uncompromising business tactics and a pervasive personal arrogance, deliberately chose to flout conventional courtroom protocols in a display of defiance that shocked many. With a brazen disregard for the sacred traditions of judicial respect, he intentionally remained seated throughout the proceedings as a symbolic act of contempt for the honorable judge and her esteemed position within the community. The entire courtroom buzzed with an electric tension as murmurs of shock, disapproval, and silent anticipation rippled through the diverse assembly of citizens, legal professionals, and observers alike. Every attentive eye in the chamber was fixed on the singular act of defiance, a provocative gesture that challenged long-standing societal norms and the prejudiced expectations deeply embedded in established tradition. The black judge, fully aware of the momentous significance of every heartbeat, maintained a stoic and measured expression that belied the turbulent storm of emotions surging steadily within her determined soul. Her commanding presence exuded an unwavering strength and resolute authority, underscoring the profound depth of her lifelong commitment to justice, fairness, and the unyielding pursuit of equality for all. As the intricate proceedings continued with methodical precision, the palpable tension in the room coalesced into an electrifying energy that both intimidated the arrogant and inspired those yearning for reform. The billionaire's deliberate refusal to stand was not merely an act of personal defiance, but a symbolic challenge aimed squarely at undermining the very integrity and moral foundation of the judicial system. In a single, silent, heart-stopping moment, the courtroom transformed into a dramatic stage where every subtle gesture carried the weight of historical struggle and a powerful message of resistance. Observers recalled the many arduous battles fought for civil rights, their vivid memories interwoven with the current display of defiance unfolding in that hallowed hall of justice and reform. The judge's calm, unyielding demeanor served as a radiant beacon of hope and perseverance, a living reminder that dignity and respect are earned through courage, sacrifice, and steadfast resolve. With each passing second, the stakes escalated dramatically as the billionaire's reckless action set in motion a series of unpredictable events that no one present could have ever foreseen. Beneath his smug exterior, a simmering arrogance and unchallenged hubris were evident, clashing violently with the solemn, time-honored ideals that the dignified judge so passionately embodied. An array of media cameras captured every nuanced detail of the encounter, broadcasting a compelling visual narrative of confrontation, unyielding principle, and historical significance to millions. Legal experts, community leaders, and concerned citizens watched in profound awe, deeply pondering the far-reaching ramifications of such a bold, unrepentant display of defiant contempt. In the background, the soft murmur of the audience evolved steadily into a collective gasp of disbelief, punctuating the charged atmosphere with an undeniable sense of imminent change. The billionaire's flagrant act, steeped in centuries-old biases and ingrained prejudices, challenged the very notion of respect and decorum that the venerable courtroom had long upheld. Amid the rising tension and growing murmurs of discontent, the judge's unwavering resolve cast a formidable shadow over the billionaire's misguided display of arrogance and blatant disdain. Her measured, resolute silence spoke volumes in the absence of words, unequivocally declaring that true authority is defined by integrity rather than superficial status or ill-gotten wealth. With every measured heartbeat, the entire courtroom felt the stirring of a transformative change, an evolution that threatened to upend entrenched power dynamics on a monumental scale. The judge's impeccable reputation for fairness and unassailable judgment lent her an aura of invincibility that the defiant billionaire, despite his vast riches, could never hope to replicate. As whispers of scandal, historic injustice, and long overdue accountability swirled amongst the crowd, the courtroom became a crucible for profound societal transformation and redemption. The lavish surroundings, once symbols of elite privilege and unassailable power, now served as a stark, ironic backdrop to a confrontation steeped in deep moral significance and purpose. Even those hardened by years of cynicism could not ignore the magnetic force of the judge's silent protest, a protest that resonated powerfully against decades of systemic discrimination. The billionaire's deliberate refusal to rise from his seat became a provocative act that ignited long-suppressed emotions of anger, sorrow, and determined resolve among the assembled onlookers. His defiant posture, intended to assert dominance and superiority, inadvertently exposed the fragile underpinnings of a system built on outdated hierarchies and unchecked prejudice. The judge, with her unyielding gaze and dignified poise, embodied the collective will of a community that demanded respect, fairness, and unwavering justice for every citizen. In that charged and unforgettable moment, the courtroom transcended its physical confines to become a battleground for truth, honor, and moral clarity in the face of oppression. Every intricate detail, from the opulent furnishings to the carefully subdued lighting, contributed to an ambience that amplified the gravity of the historic and fateful encounter. The palpable tension was evident as legal advisors, seasoned journalists, and impassioned onlookers alike recognized that an unprecedented moment in history was unfolding before them. The billionaire's actions, though executed with deliberate defiance and unchecked arrogance, were slowly beginning to unravel under the relentless force of an unyielding moral authority. With every passing moment, the scales of justice appeared to tip increasingly in favor of the resolute figure whose unwavering presence challenged deep-seated corruption and elitism. The judge's silent yet powerful challenge resonated profoundly with those who had long suffered from marginalization and injustice inflicted by a society governed by inequity. A deep, almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere signaled that the events of the day would indelibly mark a turning point in the enduring struggle for justice and equality. The billionaire's once confident, smug demeanor faltered visibly under the intense, unwavering scrutiny of a community that had grown weary of oppression and blatant disrespect. As the formal proceedings advanced with deliberate precision, every individual in the courtroom was compelled to confront the stark realities of power, accountability, and change. In a gesture that defied all conventional expectations, the judge's resolute and dignified presence began to gradually unravel the billionaire's carefully constructed veneer of invulnerability. In the wake of the stunning courtroom confrontation, the judge rose with measured calm, her every step resonating with an unyielding promise of retribution against injustice. The billionaire, still seething with indignation, watched from his reserved seat as the judge prepared to deliver her unexpected response to his flagrant disrespect. With deliberate poise, she unfurled a thick folder containing meticulously gathered evidence that challenged not only his authority, but the very foundation of his vast, tainted fortune. The documents, compiled over years of relentless pursuit of truth, detailed his dubious business practices and the systematic exploitation of vulnerable communities. Each piece of evidence was a calculated strike against the rampant corruption that had, for too long, shielded his extravagant arrogance from accountability. As the judge's voice resonated through the marble hall, every word was imbued with the weight of countless untold stories of those wronged by his ruthless empire. Her declaration was not merely a personal rebuke, but a clarion call for reform that reverberated through every corner of the institution. The courtroom, once stifled by a palpable sense of resignation, now vibrated with an air of imminent transformation and hope. Journalists and legal experts alike leaned forward, their expressions a mixture of astonishment and admiration as they absorbed the unfolding drama. The billionaire's sneer faltered momentarily, replaced by a dawning realization that his carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble. In that fleeting moment, the accumulated weight of public scrutiny and moral outrage pressed down upon him with relentless force. The judge continued her address, enumerating each violation with precision, transforming the legal arena into a platform for long overdue accountability. Her tone, resolute and unyielding, left no room for ambiguity or defiance, demanding that truth and justice be upheld above all else. The evidence illuminated a dark tapestry of deceit, where financial excess and human cost were interwoven in a narrative of unchecked power. Each revelation served as a resounding indictment of a system that had too long rewarded greed and arrogance over integrity and compassion. The judge's methodical exposition dismantled every argument the billionaire had ever used to justify his self-serving behavior. As she spoke, the stunned silence of the courtroom was punctuated only by the distant hum of collective realization spreading among the onlookers. Her words resonated deeply with those who had silently borne the brunt of his exploitation, sparking a renewed determination for systemic change. Even the most skeptical observers found themselves compelled by the clarity and urgency of her message, which transcended the boundaries of the legal proceedings. The billionaire's earlier bravado was replaced by an uneasy tension as he grappled with the undeniable force of a justice that was both righteous and imminent. Behind closed doors, aides and advisors exchanged anxious glances, acutely aware that the winds of public opinion were shifting inexorably. The judge's courage, tempered by years of experience and sacrifice, shone through as a beacon of hope for all who had suffered under tyranny. Her unwavering commitment to fairness redefined the narrative of the day, transforming a moment of personal affront into a symbol of collective empowerment. As her detailed allegations echoed against the high vaulted ceilings, the walls of the courthouse seemed to absorb the historic significance of the moment. The carefully documented transgressions served as a stark reminder that no amount of wealth or influence could override the immutable principles of justice. The judge's incisive critique not only dismantled the billionaire's veneer of invulnerability, but also exposed the broader systemic flaws that had allowed his behavior to persist. In a series of deliberate pauses, she allowed the gravity of her revelations to settle into the minds of everyone present, each silence heavier than the last. Every individual in the room, from seasoned jurists to ordinary citizens, could sense that a profound turning point in the battle against corruption had been reached. The media, positioned at every vantage point, captured the intensity of the moment, their lenses documenting history as it unfolded with raw authenticity. Social media channels erupted with live commentary and fervent support for the judge's courageous stance, amplifying her message far beyond the courtroom. The billionaire's face, etched with lines of disbelief and dawning regret, betrayed the realization that his empire was crumbling beneath the scrutiny of truth. The judge's evidence, presented with unassailable logic and clarity, left no doubt that justice was a force that could not be bought or bribed. Each detailed account within the folder was a testament to the resilience of those who had dared to stand against the tide of unchecked exploitation. Her unwavering voice, laced with both authority and compassion, underscored the collective strength of community united in its pursuit of fairness. The symbolic act of her presenting irrefutable evidence transformed the courtroom from a stage of confrontation into a crucible for moral reckoning. Every word she uttered was a clarion call that echoed the deep-seated yearning for justice, equality, and transparency in governance. The unfolding drama was not merely a legal dispute, but a transformative moment that challenged entrenched power structures and ignited the fires of change. The billionaire's subsequent silence was a testament to the profound impact of her revelations, which had rendered his defenses impotent and hollow. In that decisive moment, the scales of power shifted irrevocably, heralding a new era where accountability was demanded and corruption exposed. As the session drew to a close, the judge's resolute stance and unwavering determination left an indelible impression on every soul present, promising that the quest for justice would continue with renewed vigor. As the courtroom settled from the judge's powerful disclosure, a hushed anticipation enveloped the space. The judge's next move was meticulously planned, born of years of unwavering dedication to truth and fairness. Her measured gaze swept across the room, connecting with those whose lives had been marred by the billionaire's greed. In a calm, deliberate tone, she declared that further evidence of corruption would be unveiled in due course. The billionaire, his composure fraying, shifted uncomfortably as the weight of impending accountability bore down on him. Courtroom attendees exchanged glances filled with hope and determination, eager for the next act in this unfolding drama. Legal experts recognized the profound implications of the judge's actions, noting that this was a turning point in modern jurisprudence. With every passing moment, the judge's authority resonated more powerfully, reaffirming that justice was not for sale. A hush fell over the room as the judge revealed that the evidence at hand was only the beginning of a comprehensive inquiry. Her declaration was met with a mix of murmurs and nods, each observer silently affirming their support for her courageous stance. The billionaire's posture, once defiantly proud, now betrayed subtle signs of vulnerability and regret. Outside the courthouse, the gathered crowd buzzed with excitement, their collective energy fueled by the promise of change. Social media platforms erupted with real-time commentary, amplifying the judge's message to a global audience. The judge's carefully curated plan to expose deeper layers of corruption hinted at a far-reaching investigation. Each detail she disclosed was a building block in the edifice of accountability that was being erected before their eyes. The judge emphasized that this inquiry would not only scrutinize the billionaire's past actions, but also the systemic flaws enabling his success. As her words reverberated throughout the room, the legal community began to grasp the magnitude of the challenge ahead. There was a palpable sense that the old order, steeped in privilege and unchecked power, was finally beginning to waver. Witnesses who had long been silenced by fear now felt emboldened by the judge's steadfast commitment to justice. The courtroom transformed into a crucible of truth, where every assertion was underpinned by a relentless pursuit of fairness. Behind her calm exterior, the judge harbored a fervent desire to rectify decades of injustice inflicted on marginalized communities. Her strategic unveiling of additional evidence was designed to dismantle the billionaire's carefully constructed narrative of invulnerability. The judge articulated that the forthcoming revelations would expose a network of exploitation that extended far beyond one man's empire. In her precise diction, she challenged not only the legal establishment but also the societal norms that allowed such corruption to flourish. Every observer present could feel the monumental shift in the atmosphere as the forces of accountability converged within the hallowed halls. The billionaire's attempts at maintaining control were increasingly undermined by the relentless tide of evidence and moral scrutiny. In a subtle yet powerful gesture, the judge signaled for the courtroom stenographer to document every word with unerring accuracy. Her focus remained unyielding as she recounted the chain of events that had led to this defining moment of reckoning. The judge's narrative was interwoven with poignant reminders of past injustices, serving as a clarion call for rectification. Legal aides and consultants observed her proceedings with a mix of admiration and trepidation, fully aware of the implications for the future. Her actions resonated deeply with those who had suffered the consequences of unchecked opulence and corrupt authority. The judge asserted that the pursuit of truth was an ongoing journey, one that required unwavering vigilance and collective effort. Her assurance that every misdeed would be brought to light instilled renewed hope among those who had long been oppressed. As the room absorbed her solemn declarations, even the staunchest defenders of the status quo began to question their own complicity. The judge's unwavering moral compass illuminated a path toward a more equitable future, where justice was both blind and unyielding. In that charged moment, the power dynamics in the courtroom shifted unmistakably in favor of accountability and reform. The billionaire, now reduced to a shadow of his former arrogance, appeared increasingly isolated amidst the relentless tide of evidence. With a final, resolute nod, the judge confirmed that this investigation was only the beginning of a broader movement for systemic change. Her words, both measured and forceful, echoed in the minds of everyone present, igniting a collective desire to challenge entrenched injustice. As the proceedings drew to a close, the judge left the courtroom with an aura of unassailable authority, heralding a future defined by integrity, transparency, and the promise of true justice. After the judge's compelling declarations, a charged silence enveloped the courtroom as anticipation for what followed grew palpably intense. With measured resolve, she signaled that the next phase of proceedings would expose hidden networks of collusion and illicit gain. Her voice, steady and authoritative, declared that every participant in the exploitation of the vulnerable would face unwavering scrutiny. The courtroom, still reeling from previous revelations, now awaited further evidence that would dismantle entrenched corruption without compromise. Observers noted that the judge's unyielding determination had transformed the judicial space into a formidable forum for systemic reckoning. Each word she uttered carried the weight of years of struggle and sacrifice, empowering those who had long suffered in silence. The judge announced the formation of an independent investigative panel tasked with uncovering every hidden layer of deceit. Her decision, unexpected yet resolute, sent shockwaves through the established hierarchy and ignited a fervor for justice. The billionaire, visibly disturbed by the judge's announcement, shifted uncomfortably as murmurs of support for accountability swelled. In that moment, the balance of power tilted decisively as the room collectively embraced the promise of relentless accountability. Legal experts exchanged knowing glances, understanding that this marked a pivotal moment in the enduring battle against systemic corruption. The investigative panel's mandate was clear: to trace every illicit transaction and expose every instance of exploitative gain. Meticulous documentation, gathered in utmost secrecy until now, will be scrutinized under the unforgiving light of justice. The judge's announcement reinvigorated the witnesses, whose previously muted testimonies began to stir with newfound courage. A palpable energy surged through the courtroom as every attendee sensed that an era of unyielding transparency had dawned. The judge, embodying the spirit of accountability, outlined a detailed plan that left no facet of corruption unchallenged. Her carefully considered strategy aimed to break the cycle of impunity that had long protected the powerful from consequence. Within moments, legal aides organized essential documents and arranged confidential interviews with key, courageous witnesses. The air was thick with the promise of long-overdue transparency as every individual present grasped the magnitude of the moment. Social media erupted with real-time updates, amplifying the judge's message and rallying widespread support for reform. National news outlets tuned in as the unprecedented proceedings captured the collective imagination of a justice-starved public. The judge insisted that no evidence, however seemingly minor, would be disregarded in the pursuit of absolute truth. Her words resonated powerfully as a mandate for integrity, urging everyone to confront and dismantle the mechanisms of exploitation. The courtroom transformed into a living testament to the transformative potential of principled leadership and unwavering ethics. Amid the charged atmosphere, the billionaire's earlier defiance gave way to a mounting sense of isolation and regret. He realized that his acts of arrogance had inadvertently unleashed a force of justice that could not be subdued or ignored. The judge's actions sparked a ripple effect that extended far beyond the courthouse, igniting crucial debates in every community. In a quiet corner of the room, those long marginalized felt their voices strengthened by the clarity of her determined vision. Every detail of the investigative plan was designed to unmask those who thrived on the exploitation of vulnerable lives. The judge reiterated that the relentless pursuit of justice demanded an uncompromising commitment to uncovering hidden transgressions. Her resolve stood in stark contrast to the backdrop of corruption, underscoring the inherent power of principled, courageous leadership. The methodical process promised to reveal the true extent of financial malfeasance and the moral decay underlying the empire. In her closing remarks for the day, the judge assured the public that accountability would neither be delayed nor compromised. The independent panel, now officially in place, was entrusted with the critical task of exposing every facet of the corruption. A renewed sense of purpose spread among the courtroom attendants, as hope was rekindled by her unwavering vision. Each member of the investigative team was selected for their expertise, ensuring that not a single detail would escape notice. The systematic unraveling of the billionaire's empire began with a careful examination of financial records and confidential correspondences. Every document and testimony was meticulously cataloged, forming an unassailable archive that would serve as a beacon of truth. The judge's measured tone and deliberate actions reinforced the idea that justice is an ongoing process, not merely a fleeting triumph. As the session concluded, the resolute determination in her eyes promised that the fight for accountability would continue unabated. In the wake of the investigative panel's exhaustive report, the courtroom's atmosphere shifted to one of determined expectation as the fifth chapter of the trial began with a resolute promise to redefine justice. The judge, exuding calm authority and tempered compassion, outlined a bold, unprecedented strategy aimed at eradicating the systemic corruption that had emboldened the billionaire's past transgressions. Her measured articulation conveyed that every facet of the established order, its policies, its power brokers, and its long-entrenched privileges, would now be subjected to scrupulous examination and radical reform. As her voice reverberated off the historic walls of the ornate chamber, a hush fell over the audience, uniting jurists, activists, and citizens in a shared quest for accountability and transformation. The billionaire, now diminished in stature by the inexorable force of mounting evidence, observed with growing dismay as his legacy of unchecked wealth and power began to unravel under her incisive scrutiny. Every meticulously prepared document and recorded testimony was introduced as part of a comprehensive framework designed to expose not just individual misconduct, but the entire architecture of exploitation that had flourished in secrecy. With each statement, the judge constructed an indelible narrative linking decades of malfeasance to the current imbalance of power, ensuring that no stone was left unturned in the pursuit of rectitude. The room, suffused at the weight of historical grievances and the promise of renewal, absorbed her every word as if each syllable were a clarion call for profound, systemic change. Legal experts, whose careers had been dedicated to upholding the integrity of the law, nodded in solemn agreement as she methodically dismantled the defenses of a corrupt system built on inequity. Her speech, rich with legal precision and moral clarity, underscored the fundamental belief that justice was not a commodity to be bartered, but an inalienable right owed to every citizen. The judge explained that the forthcoming reforms would implement stringent oversight measures, ensuring that no individual or institution could ever again manipulate the scales of justice for personal gain. Each proposed measure was presented as part of an integrated blueprint, aimed at rebalancing the power dynamics that had long favored the wealthy elite at the expense of the common good. As she detailed the step-by-step process for instituting these reforms, the courtroom became a microcosm of a broader societal revolution, one where transparency and accountability reigned supreme. The meticulously organized evidence, once hidden behind layers of obfuscation, now stood as a testament to the resilience of those who had suffered from decades of systematic abuse. In that charged moment, the judge's unwavering commitment to fairness resonated deeply with every observer, sparking a collective determination to restore dignity to a tarnished institution. Her vision was clear: dismantle the networks of collusion that had enabled unchecked exploitation and rebuild a judicial system founded on equity, respect, and unyielding integrity. Each statistic, each documented instance of malfeasance, and every personal testimony was woven together to create a narrative that exposed the hidden costs of unbridled greed. The courtroom, now transformed into an arena of truth and redemption, bore witness to a process that promised to rewrite the rules governing power and privilege. With eloquence and precision, the judge detailed how the integration of independent oversight bodies would ensure that future abuses could be detected and thwarted before they festered. Her declaration was not merely a response to past injustices, but a forward-looking mandate designed to safeguard the rights of those who had been marginalized and exploited. The strategic presentation of irrefutable evidence underscored a commitment to reform that transcended individual retribution and sought to heal the collective wounds inflicted by systemic corruption. As she spoke, the atmosphere grew palpably heavier with a promise of change, a promise that the old order, steeped in elitist arrogance, would soon give way to a new era of fairness. The judge's resolute tone conveyed that this was a watershed moment in the legal realm, where the convergence of passion, evidence, and righteous indignation would overturn long-standing abuses. In every carefully chosen phrase, she illustrated the interconnectedness of past wrongs and the present imperative to construct a future defined by equal justice for all. The strategic reforms outlined were designed to be both immediate and enduring, ensuring that no future generation would have to endure the corrosive effects of unchecked authority. With an unflinching gaze, she challenged every courtroom participant to recognize that the fight against corruption was not confined to these hallowed halls, but was a battle for the soul of society. Each word was imbued with the weight of historical accountability and a steadfast belief that the truth, once revealed, could never be concealed again. The judge asserted that the integration of new oversight protocols would create a robust system of checks and balances, forever altering the relationship between power and the law. Her comprehensive plan included provisions for regular audits, transparent reporting mechanisms, and community participation in the monitoring of judicial processes. As she meticulously enumerated each component of the reform agenda, a wave of optimism surged through the room, carrying with it the hope of redemption for a broken system. The billionaire's once mighty influence now seemed as fragile as glass, threatened by the unrelenting pursuit of truth that her words had ignited. In that decisive hour, the courtroom became a crucible for the transformation of public policy, a space where the promise of reform was as tangible as the air itself. The judge's articulate vision was a beacon for those who had long suffered in silence, providing a roadmap to restore faith in a justice system once corrupted by avarice. Every meticulously verified fact and every testimony of suffering contributed to a narrative that demanded not only accountability, but also the systemic overhaul of entrenched institutions. The strategic dismantling of outdated legal practices was presented as the cornerstone of a broader movement to ensure that power would henceforth be exercised with humility and responsibility. With unyielding determination, the judge vowed that the forthcoming legal reforms would leave no room for the kind of arrogance that had allowed the billionaire to defy the very principles of equality. The atmosphere was electric with the promise of a new beginning, a future where justice was administered impartially and where every individual's rights were fiercely protected. As the judge's proposals resonated through the chamber, the assembled crowd found its collective voice rising in a chorus of hope, demanding that the corrupt structures of the past be dismantled. In a final, impassioned declaration, she affirmed that the transformative process initiated in that room would ripple outward, inspiring widespread societal change and restoring public trust in the legal system. With the resounding echo of her words marking the close of the session, the judge left an indelible imprint on history, a promise that the era of impunity was over and that justice at long last would prevail. As the final chapter of the historic trial unfolded, the courtroom transformed into a sanctuary of resolute hope and steadfast renewal. The judge, now embodying the legacy of unwavering justice, delivered a conclusive verdict that reverberated deeply through every heart present. Her measured words, laden with the gravity of hard-won truth, signified the ultimate triumph of accountability over unbridled arrogance. With deliberate clarity, she declared that the systemic reforms initiated would permanently dismantle the vestiges of corruption. The billionaire, stripped of his former pretense, listened in silence as the court pronounced a new era of transparent governance. Every witness, every piece of meticulously curated evidence, and every voice of the oppressed had converged in this decisive moment. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation as the judge outlined future built on equality, integrity, and relentless pursuit of justice. In that hallowed chamber, the echoes of past grievances were met with the promise of restorative measures and institutional overhaul. Her final remarks underscored that the fight for justice was an enduring journey, not a fleeting victory confined to one courtroom day. The carefully documented legacy of exploitation was now rendered impotent by the indomitable force of truth and reform. Each word resonated with those who had long yearned for the dismantling of oppressive systems that had burdened society. The judge's unyielding stance ignited a spark of collective empowerment that spread far beyond the courthouse walls. With every declaration, she reinforced that no individual or institution would ever again evade the rigors of accountability. The transformative blueprint she presented was embraced by a community ready to reclaim its dignity and rights. Her resolute tone conveyed that the era of unchecked arrogance was irrevocably over and would not be revisited. The meticulously crafted reforms promised regular oversight, transparent audits, and direct community participation in governance. Observers, from seasoned legal minds to impassioned citizens, felt the profound shift in power dynamics unfolding before them. The judge's closing pronouncements were a clarion call that the scales of justice would now balance in favor of equity. In a definitive gesture, she symbolically closed the case file, marking the end of a long struggle against corruption. The solemn nods and quiet applause in the chamber testified to the universal recognition of this transformative moment. Her voice, steady and unwavering, continued to inspire those who had suffered under the weight of systemic injustice. Each listener carried away the conviction that integrity must always triumph over the lure of unchecked power. The courtroom's once tense energy gave way to an atmosphere of hopeful determination and collective resolve. In that conclusive hour, every participant felt the historical significance of a justice system reborn in transparency. The meticulously recorded proceedings were destined to serve as a beacon of reform for generations to come. The judge's legacy, now immortalized in the annals of legal history, would guide future endeavors toward fairness. Every reform measure she endorsed was meticulously tailored to eradicate the inefficiencies of past injustices. Her words painted a vivid portrait of a society where every citizen's rights were fiercely protected and honored. The billionaire's fall from grace became a powerful symbol of how absolute power was finally being held to account. With a final sweep of her commanding gaze, the judge signaled that the dark days of exploitation were drawing to a close. The collective heartbeat of the courtroom matched the rhythm of progress as systemic change took root. Her conclusive decree left an indelible imprint on both the legal framework and the moral conscience of the nation. The promising reforms initiated that day were destined to resonate in every corner of a society longing for change. Each meticulously drafted provision of the new judicial guidelines was celebrated as a milestone in ethical governance. The judge's resolute determination had not only dismantled old hierarchies, but also re-established faith in the rule of law. As the proceedings drew to a close, the weight of history was replaced by the light of a reformed, transparent future. The courtroom, once a battleground for bitter disputes, emerged as a symbol of collective healing and renewed purpose. Every individual present recognized that the transformative journey they had witnessed would inspire widespread societal reform. In that singular, defining moment, the promise of true justice was no longer a distant dream but a tangible, guiding reality. With the final gavel's echo fading into silence, the judge affirmed that the era of impunity was over and that a new dawn of accountability had irrevocably begun.